excited to be here again. This is awesome.
So excited to have you. And today we're talking about systems and SOPs, standard operating procedures. So where do you want to get started? I know this is your kind of the expert in systems.
Well, and I was thinking about that today. I was like, ooh, how do I start this? Where do I start? And I think let's start with why. Like, why would you want to have SOPs in your business? So I know this is one of your hot topics too, Molly. So why do you use SOPs?
So for me, SOPs are really important for anybody who is scaling their business. So if you want to stop, sort of like the day to day, like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And, run your business more professionally, then I really believe SOPs, standard operating procedures, are what can take you there. So what about you?
Yeah, I agree. My philosophy is use your brain for thinking, not for remembering. And so for me, an SOP just takes did I remember to do this? Like, it takes that whole idea of thinking it and then reinventing the wheel and then reinventing the wheel again and then reinventing the wheel yet one more time. So it's just like, oh, here it is. And I share with my clients, if it's something you do more than once, then there is and I'll use SOPs. I'll probably use process or procedure, or like I'll interchange the words. Like there's an opportunity to make that whole thing easier, even if you only do it once a year. Like I have a whole checklist of things for when I do my taxes. And so instead of trying to remember, what do I need to do? Where's this stuff at? I just pull it right out and there it is.
Awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, if you're watching this, I'm hearing the echo from this. Let's see. Are you hearing an echo?
I do not.
Okay. But what I was going to say is if you're watching this live or on the replay, let us know what your experience with systems and SOPs or standard operating procedures or whatever you want to call it, processes, procedures. What's your experience with that? Have you built them for your business? Have you written them out? Do you use them daily? Is this something that's even on your radar? So I'm very curious to know. I think for a business owner who, again, has one process that maybe they do over and over and over again, it's a way to have a standard. So it's a standard operating procedure that anybody can follow. So that's another reason to do it, is if you are hiring or if you're expanding your team. And so you want to have this one way that you do it be replicated over and over throughout the company. And you don't have to worry about, oh, well, I don't know if this is done, or I don't know if they'll do it this way, So,
I was thinking if we take this out of business for a second and move it into like nonprofit organizations or committees that you may be on. Like I always think back to, man, it was really great when I was a new member of NAWBO and they did blah, 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 and then when that person who was in charge of that leaves, it doesn't always stay. When we survey our membership, often we'll say, what was your favorite meeting we did and why? And sometimes people remember things that were 10, 15, 20 years ago that people who haven't been in the organization that long don't know. And those things don't necessarily, some of those traditions don't necessarily stay alive because the people who did them are no longer in the organization. And that's it for your business too. Like if you have someone who's really, really great at customer service, and they don't, and I was like, hey, Vicky's here. Like if you have someone who's really great with customer service and they do all these little extra things and your clients love it, and then they leave to move into a different position and you don't have an SOP, like that gets lost.
Absolutely.
And so it's one way to make, like you said, everything standard. It's another thing that you can start to like let that kind of stuff fall out of your brain. The other thing is my favorite book right now is called Clockwork by Mike Michalowicz. And the idea behind Clockwork is being able to build a business where you can remove yourself from it for extended periods of time, and the business can go on without you.
Right.
And then when you get it to so fine-tuned, employees could remove themselves for extended periods of time. And people, that can't happen without a really solid structure of SOPs.
Yeah. So before you get into it, let's talk a little bit, because I know you mentioned first talking about nonprofits and NAWBO. So how long have you been a member of NAWBO?
Ooh, I have been a member of NAWBO now for 5 years.
Wow. Okay. And have you been a chapter leader the whole time?
I was on the programming committee, or I became the director of programming 5 months or so after I joined. So pretty much, yes.
Pretty much. And that happens a lot, right? We kind of like tap the shoulder of certain people and say, hey, we want you to be helping with this. And they become part of our leadership and kind of ongoing. So, and so do you have SOPs for your chapter that?
So we do not have them as well written in every position, or let me rephrase that. Some positions have stronger SOPs than others. So this is something that we started a couple of years ago. And so some of our board members have embraced the idea. And, so like we have one where you come in, like there is a binder and everything you could possibly need is in that binder. And then we have other positions where you have like a really great timeline. Like this is what you do in January, February, March, and and some basic structure to some SOPs. And then we have a couple of our newer board positions that we are figuring it out as we go along.
No, that's interesting, because one of the things that we're doing, and I just kind of want to do a shout out to NAWBO and to Megan Patton, is that we are using the My One Page Plan. And so it's a one-page business plan, but it's also an online tool. And she's the one that kind of administrates that for NAWBO for each chapter. And so as a chapter, we're able to put down our vision and all of our goals, our 3-year goals on there, and then track them and then add updates. And so all of that is really helpful, because we created this whole membership plan. We created a whole corporate partnership structure. And instead of just losing it, it's there, right? So the next person who comes in can sort of like take a look at what's been done, start where they are or adjust as they need to, and then keep going with it. And so, some of that continuity is, like you said, it's really important, especially when it's something that people really remember fondly, or the things that they love. And so I've been trying to really like move our chapter into using it. We never really did. I think we just didn't know what
what a robust tool.
Yeah.
It's such a robust tool. We're lucky because Megan's from Cleveland. So we were on the we got to be her poster child early on, and also like her training ground. So, we were lucky that we were able to adopt that early. And what's great is when we onboard new board members, one of the things we have them do is look back at past updates so that they can get a feel for what's been done before. Not that you always want to do what's always been done. And I think that's one of the things, as we're talking SOPs, that's one of the things to be careful of. It doesn't mean you create it once and it's done forever and it never changes. It just means you have that process that you follow and that you can go back and adapt and adjust along the way, which is what we've done using the one-page business plan.
Yeah, actually, and I forgot that you were in Megan's chapter. So what's really nice as a NAWBO member and using the My One Page Plan is that you can see what all the other chapters are doing. So we often, just so you know, because we're new, so we're 3 years old or so as a chapter, we look at Cleveland. Like we just say, okay, let's look. Which chapters are we going to look at? Let's look at Cleveland. Okay, so what have they done? Okay, I see. And so you're much further along than we are, and it's nice because we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
No.
Oh, here's like some levels that they've set up for their corporate sponsorships. Here's one of the events that they're doing, and here's how they track that. So it's been really great to to, be able to collaborate on resources and also not reinvent the wheel, and to be able to pass on the information from person to person and position to position. So we've had some board members switch from, like, oh, they were doing this and now they realize they really like this other thing. And it's been an easier transition with all of that in place.
Right. I think it's a great place. And I know that there are other ways to keep the history. And so SOPs aren't necessarily for that, but they are to make sure that you're capturing the important activities that you do to move your organization or your business forward in such an easy way. Like, my favorite part is, don't reinvent the wheel. Megan always jokes and says, send people to Cleveland. So you're the first one I've ever spoken to who I found out actually looks. So I have to remember I have to remind our board members to update more regularly now. But hey, it's good to know you're looking. And that we can be because again, we have Megan. So she helped us along.
Watching you.
Yeah, I know you are. She always says people are watching us. It turns out it's true.
No, and Megan's been really great. I mean, I was on like a training call with her because I was like clicking around, like, it's not intuitive for me. But is that something? So do you have a process of creating the standard operating procedures for your clients? Do you use something like a tool like my one-page plan or anything like that?
Yeah. So a couple of the things that I share with my clients when we're working on creating SOPs, I said, do not stop your day to write it down, because who has time to do that? I said, as you're doing it, capture it, whatever that may look like for you. So maybe it's screenshots. Maybe I like Loom. I'm a big fan of Loom. So I can just, so as we're talking about SOPs and Loom and one-page business plan, I shoot a video of that and say, here's how you update your plan. Here's how you read everyone's update with one click. Here's this. Now, it will need to be redone as things adjust and change. And that's the things about SOPs is they're fluid. So I would share with my clients, one, don't do them. Like, don't be the one that creates it if it's not your job. Like have the person who's doing the job create it whenever possible. However, if it's something new or something that you want to set some parameters around, start one and then give it to someone else to flesh out. But absolutely, I think the hardest way to do it is to sit down one morning and say, I'm going to write out all my SOPs. Like, you're going to be missing spots. It's just do it, document it as you go.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the first times that I was creating my SOPs, it was on the way back from a business trip. And so I really used that airplane ride time to do SOPs. So it's too bad that we're not traveling right now. I can definitely feel it, like, oh, I even updated them on my airplane rides. And like, if I didn't have somebody next to me who was chatty or anything, then I was just writing them down. And so I do think it's good to set aside time. So even if you're saying like you just write them as you're doing them, and it just depends who you are, I think. So I mean, that definitely is best, and especially for the person who is actually doing it. Now, if they're not the kind of person who is noticing all the details of what they do, then you do need some help in adding those in, because sometimes, we do things and we don't even realize we're doing them. And then until we need to explain it to somebody else. And that's when I've seen it. It's like, oh, yeah, I know I said this, but I really meant that we also do this, this, and this,
Right. Right. Because I think a lot of times there's those things those exceptions. Like, it's like, oh yeah, this is how we do it. Oh, except for her. She's special. So we do it this way for this client. And oh yeah, this client over here, we do it a little bit different for them.
Yeah.
And so I think typically your SOPs is the Pareto principle, 80-20. You're going to create it. It's going to handle probably 80% of what you're doing. And there's going to be about 20% difference, like exceptions and things that you have to do there. And that's okay. You know, and you also have to think about what's the reason for creating it. Meaning maybe it's to make sure that you don't miss a step in doing a process, in which case it is very, very detailed. Or maybe you're teaching someone how to do a task that you absolutely have to have all the steps. Like that is completely different than creating something because you're delegating out a project and you want to give boundaries around it. You know, and be able to say, look, you have the authority to customer service. You have the authority to refund up to $500. After $500, you need to, you know, blah, blah, blah. So I think you have to think through also, why am I creating this? Is it so that you have a place to fall back? So like, kind of like policies and procedures. Like, it's my policy that, you know, or it's our business policy that we blah, blah, blah. I used to use mine. Oh, it's my business policy that I don't see clients on Friday. No, that's Lisa's policy, who does not want to have clients on Friday. But like sometimes it's like a policy and procedure thing versus an SOP, but like it's giving you the structure around your business. It's just to take the strain off your brain to try to remember everything.
Nice, nice. And so, I mean, I know for me, you know, why SOPs are important, and, you know, we've talked about it a little bit. How have systems and SOPs made a difference for you and your clients? Like, what are some of the stories you can share with us?
Yeah. So I'm thinking, one of the things that I'm thinking right now is a client who her onboarding process was kind of all over the place. So she would onboard new clients and then they wouldn't have the paperwork that they needed when they came to a meeting, or they would have the paperwork, but the meeting wouldn't show up in her calendar, or like there's all of those pieces. And basically all she needed was a checklist. It was just, here we go. You know, and sometimes it was her who was doing the onboarding and she missed steps. Sometimes it was her, you know, she had an admin, they were doing the onboarding, they missed steps. So I think that's definitely one of the places that I think for SOPs is onboarding. Another place is, you know, filling orders. Like if you think of, like one of my clients has a lot of customization in the order, and it would change pieces, but depending on who was filling the order would depend on what their price was, which is not how you want to run a business, you know, based on what you're, you know, oh, well, I'm going to keep calling back until I get Mary because I know I get a better price with Mary. Like, you know, like that's silly. I think another place where SOPs are really helpful are when we're moving things from one person to another. You know, and we talked a little bit before about tools, workflow tools. But, you know, I'm thinking I can use my own example. Like we use Asana, and we now have an SOP for, and what we do is we use it as a template and we just recreate. But for example, when we do these, when you and I do our lives, like I have a project in Asana, and we have, it's, you know, share that we're going to do it, prep ahead of time. Once it comes out, share. And, you know, and whose job is it to recreate the next project list to make sure that it's always in there? And, you know, I think that's a great place. The way that we use Asana is that we just have a template that we will duplicate. And so we always have that. So that's our SOPs for the things that I share with my virtual staff.
Mm-hmm.
We use that there. I'm trying to think of some other stuff.
Can we just
go ahead?
Pause for a second, because you're speaking my language. I am a huge Asana fan. So it's one of those things I'm pretty geeky about. Like, I've used a lot of different programs, and I just love Asana. I think it's so easy to use. It's you can customize it depending on how you need to use it. whether you need boards or lists, or you need a calendar, or but it's just so easy to keep discussions in one place about a certain task, or to add attachments from Dropbox or Google Drive or directly, and like all these different clients, and being able to see what and be accountable for what we're doing. Like it's all there. It's all here it is. And it's really the keys to the kingdom, but it's such a relief also to not have everything in my brain. So kind of going back to what you were saying about using your brain, not for your memory, but
but to think.
So I love Asana for that. So I just wanted to do a little shout out for that.
Yes. And, and I love how you had put up there, whose job is it to create the next? We do, we used to have in NAWBO Cleveland a couple years ago on that particular board, we used to have a tag your it system. And because we realized we would have great processes, but no one knew when it was their turn to do their part. And so we created and we added another column, and it was a tag your it. And you just knew, okay, when I'm done with this, I need to move it to the next person. And what I think is great about Asana is it kind of does that for you, because you're just assigning the person in the date and you're automatically tagging who's next. But we used to do a tag who's this on everything that we crossed. Like I wish we would have used a project management tool such as this the whole time I was on the board.
Yeah,
it's a place we'll move to.
I did try to get my NAWBO board to use it, but that didn't go as well.
Yeah, we're not there yet.
It's not like it doesn't work if not everybody uses it, right? It's like if certain people are not on it, then it's not as useful, right? So,
and I think that's in general when we talk about SOPs, like that's a huge thing to remember, is you need to make sure that however you're creating them and however you're storing them, you have the bar low enough that the people who need to use them can easily access them and can easily change them. It was the craziest thing. I was just having a conversation with a client about an hour ago, and she was talking about how she's trying to create this user manual for this position. And she said the problem is the computer she's working on is very outdated and she can't screenshot. And so she goes, now, I'm trying to do this with a picture next to it. And she said, but now she says, I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. And so we were talking about using Loom or, doing some video, something like that. And, the people really wanted, a handbook where you turn one page and then turn the next page. But you have to think about what equipment are they using? Do you want, like, I love the idea of video, set it and go, but are you in a space where they can listen to video? Or do you have to make sure they have headsets? Like there's pieces to consider as you're working through creating your SOPs.
Yeah, absolutely. Like where are your SOPs going to live? We put ours actually in a membership site so people can access that. And then the videos there, but then there's also like a PDF that's supplemental. And if that's more like of a line by line linear flow to here's what is happening. But I think it's true. You really have to look at, okay, well, who's going to be using this? What's their learning style? How are they going to be processing this? Do they have headphones? Are they going to be in a place where they can, have the sound on, or are they going to need captions? All sorts of things to consider.
Yeah. And with all that being said, doing it where it doesn't hit everything we're talking about is far better than not doing it. So like everyone who's watching right now, please do not think that there's only one way to do it and it has to check all the boxes, because that is 1,000% not true. My perception is, as the business owner, you want to get it out, mostly done, and let the person who's doing it fill in the pieces if needed. Where you were talking about your airplane time, like I think that's the perfect time to sketch out what SOPs do I need. And you just think through the pieces of your business, marketing, sales, boom, boom, boom down the line. And then, okay, who can create? So, I know we talk delegating all the time, think who, not how. Who can create this SOP for me versus how?
Yeah.
And then checking back in, there's nothing like creating these SOPs, creating this beautiful 3-inch binder that sits on the shelf that no one ever looks at again. Like, make them accessible and easy to understand so that people actually use them.
Absolutely. And I mean, even if it's just a checklist, that's a good place to start, And one of the reasons that I've had clients create their SOPs is just because they've said, I can't believe my colleague or my contractor or my employee is doing this. And I said, well, do they know what they're expected to do?
Right.
Do they know? Because that seems like a reasonable thing to do, or a reasonable way to react if they didn't know. If they couldn't read your mind, then they went about it their own way and they came up with this, and that seems okay. It's not your solution, so therefore it's not like the best solution. So if you want it done a certain way, then yes, then you're going to want to put together. It's almost like your set of expectations. It's here's the order of how you do things, and here's how to do it. And that's part of being a business owner, is really establishing what the criteria is to complete these specific tasks that are part of your service or your strategy.
Right. And if you're okay with saying, here's about what I want it to look like, and letting them fill in the middle, great. If you're not okay with that, then you'll want to give them more guidance in the middle. I am definitely of the school, here's what's important. Here are the pieces that I absolutely want to make sure happen. The rest is up to you.
Right.
Figure out the rest. That being said, a lot of times when you do that, you do lose some of the history. You lose some of the, 20 years ago, we used to do this for our members, or this for our clients. Because people come in and positions change, and, things will change. So, and the point of this is just to say, if there are things that become part of the culture, you want to be able to store those potentially away from the SOPs, because the SOPs are living, breathing documents.
Maybe that can be another SOP, is to look up the historical events that people have loved and make sure you review them every year or so. So I just can create more SOPs.
Right. I think the opportunity is endless. Like, I laugh because we're talking, it could be easy as a checklist. So I have my index card, and there are things I do on the 15th and things I do on the 30th. And then there are things that I do every quarter.
Nice.
And they're on index cards. And they live right over here where my calendar lives. And I know to grab them, and I know, to go through this process, 15th and 30th. So, like, guys, it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be Asana. It doesn't have to be this beautiful video with this supplementary document with all. It does not have to be that at all. It just has to work.
Right. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. And that's just, like I said, if you hear yourself or your employees saying, wow, I didn't know it was supposed to be this way, or I didn't know how to do this, or you never told me this, or wow, this person keeps making mistakes. These are all, to me, those are all signs that need some SOPs. And they can be really simple, like you said, just a checklist, something that works to say, okay, these are the boundaries of what we need you to do. Here are the big rocks of, like, you must do this. But aside from that, go play, have fun with it, or not, or
right, or not, or here's exactly what I want you to do. Boom, 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 boom. It's so funny, like, when you're giving examples of what you'll hear. I just had someone say to me, they've been with me 4 months. How could they not know this? And I was like, when did you teach them? I was like, just because they physically have been doing the job for 4 months does not mean that you taught them how to do things. And I said, so, like, and like you were saying, like, well, they thought it was this, but I really wanted this. Well, you need to be clear. And that's where your SOPs come into place. Is it gives clarity, it gives structure, it gives boundaries, and it again gets it out of your head, and it gets it out of your employees' head. Like, again, you don't want your employees having to remember.
No.
You don't want them having to recreate the wheel every time. You just want them to use their brains for thinking, follow the process for doing.
I think that SOPs for me also are extremely good for the business owner, not just for clarity and setting expectations, but so that, okay, so for example, if you have certain tasks that they have agreed to do in their, their contract with you, that you're not just saying, well, we're going to start those one day, but we haven't yet. Like, that can get you into some gray area and some trouble if you don't have a structure for that, if you don't have a way of introducing it, and then all of a sudden you're springing this on your employee, and it's just not something that's been part of their daily tasks. So I think that, again, that goes back to clarity and communication, but it also protects the business owner in terms of everybody knowing what's expected, when it's expected, and how to go about things, and that there is a process. It's very reassuring to an employee that, hey, this has been done before. This is a process. This is how it's done. And doesn't mean that you can't be creative and add to it, but just that to know that there is something that has existed prior.
Well, and when you talk about protecting the business owner, what if the person who does all your billing gets an all expense 4-week vacation and has to leave tomorrow? Like, I recognize that is not realistic in this moment, but I hate to use the flip to that. Like, what if what if the person who does all your billing, becomes ill and is home, or, something happens? Do you want to be the business owner who says, oh, I'm sorry, we don't know how our bills are paid. We'll get back to you when she comes back from her 4-week all expenses paid vacation.
Right.
Like, people to have days off. People take vacation. People, get the flu, whatever. And you want to make sure that people can step in and do other jobs other than their own. And you can't expect them just to magically be able to do it because their desk sits near someone else's desk. Like, that does not give them the knowledge. The osmosis isn't going to work there. So I think that's another way to protect yourself is, we hear all the time, cross-train your employees. Everyone should be doing everyone's job. How? Well, one of those ways is a strong set of SOPs and building in time. Like you said, time to check our, an SOP on when to update our SOP. Yeah. And when to teach someone else, pieces of your job by using those SOPs.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today and talking about systems and SOPs. It's definitely one of favorite topics of mine. We're both fans of Asana, and that helps us keep on track with everything and stay organized with that. Any other tips, tricks, tools that you want to add before we sign off and say bye to everybody?
No, my favorite trick out of all of this is create it as you go. Just make it easy for yourself. Create it as you go.
Awesome. And I like what you're saying before. It's kind of like what a mentor of mine has said, which is done is better than perfect. So yes, get out there and just get them done. They don't need to be perfect, but also they need to be things that are living documents that people will use and that will help you streamline your business. So thank you so much for joining us. And if you're watching us on the replay or live, really appreciate you. Definitely send any comments, questions for Lisa in Facebook in the comments, and we'll get back to them. Thanks so much.
Bye.